Hello, my name is Olga Nikitina, and this is our channel about supply chain last mile innovations. And today, together with my co-founder and COO at Via Delivery, Jeff Masek, we have a very special guest, Nate Skiver. Nate is a founder at LPF Spend Management and Parcel Commerce and Delivery Consultant. Nate, thank you for coming. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely, Olga. I appreciate having the chance to chat with everybody.
Okay, then I'll start with questions. Nate, you have a long history in retail and in parcel spend management and direct-to-consumer operations. So comparing on the responsibility you had then and now versus now your own spend management firm, could you compare, please?
Sure. It's been 17 years since I started in parcel, so there was the market was a little bit different then. UPS, FedEx, Postal Service, and it wasn't simple, but it was simpler then. I started back in 2007. I had to learn everything I possibly could about parcel. I managed not a small spend, but we'll say $40 million or so on my own, and had to learn it from the ground up. And so that's when the interest started in parcel. Fast forward, I guess it would have been about 12 years, and I had the chance to move into consulting. And so I would say the pace of change in the market since I got into consulting, ironically, has probably been 3 to 4 times what it was my first 10 to 12 years I was working in parcel. And so there are a lot more players in the market. The pace of change of pricing and services, technology is a lot more rapid. So it really just requires staying on top of things and focused almost strictly on parcel to keep up with it. And luckily, I made that decision about the right time when those changes accelerated about 5 years ago.
Crazy, isn't it? Like the accessorials nowadays. Like how many are there, right? 300 plus, and they keep adding them.
Yes, they keep adding. They keep changing the rules, the amounts. It's almost a daily kind of report out on what's going on just from really the top players in the market plus the alternatives that have entered too. So
yeah, big time. Yeah, so with that said, I'll take the next question. So you came out of Parcel Forum. Thanks for joining us. We've been trying to get obviously in touch with you for probably a couple of months now. You probably went in with an expectation. You probably came out with an expectation. I'm sure they talked about FedEx's GRI. I'm sure they talked about the post office and their change, if you will, to the DDUs and all that other good stuff. What'd you go in with? What'd you come back out with?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, you mentioned a few of kind of what you would expect to hear about, talk about, and those weren't surprises. So definitely just, I think the pricing environment overall, very competitive. And so you would hear discussions, be it sessions about how UPS and FedEx are currently actually having to compete a lot on price, which is very different. I expected that. That's not new. Kind of a tough market also just through discussions with some of the alternative providers. Again, not a surprise. The Postal Service, that was probably the top topic that I heard about, had a lot of conversations about. And it's what you mentioned, pricing changes. They're making changes to the network. There's a wide range of opinions and levels of confidence in the Postal Service. And so that was really a focal point, I think, as well. I would say a couple of things also, which were, I guess, themes. One, not a surprise, but just kind of reiterated the importance of partnerships. And that's really carriers, alternative ones usually, partnering with each other, technology providers and carriers. So that, I think, just continues to ramp up, and that's due to the competitive environment. It's just, you really can't compete on your own anymore. And the other one wasn't, I guess, somewhat of a surprise. It's not something that's talked about, I think, probably enough, is not just focusing on the cost of delivery, but also really the value that delivery can create. That was, I think, socialized in a few different ways in sessions, measuring the lifetime customer value for, related to delivery, not just the cost, but really, the margin on, be it an order, even kind of a customer, taking into account all of the costs and not just delivery. So not seeing delivery only as shipping cost only, but really some of the other benefits it can drive, top line revenue conversion. That came up in a few different ways, which I was glad to hear, because being in such a cost-focused environment, it's difficult to articulate the value of anything else. And so I was, interested to hear that, and hopefully that continues.
That's great. Great. Thanks for the feedback.
Talking about carrier diversification, you highlighted that there are benefits for especially bigger retailers. How about smaller ones? Do you think it can be tricky because they lose their discounts for volume?
It can be. I mean, I think carrier diversification, in the example that you shared, Olga, of the impact of discounts. So for those who don't know, UPS and FedEx primarily, they have revenue commitments in agreements that customers sign with them. So there's a lot of details that go into it, but basically if you move volume for one of those carriers and it takes the revenue or spend that you have with that carrier, with FedEx or UPS, below a certain threshold, your discounts can be compromised. They can go down, meaning your costs go up. But I think there's some fact there and there's some perception or myth. And that's where I think really smaller or medium-sized shippers even have challenges with that in actually doing the math and actually managing those contracts and that spend very closely, so they understand what the impact really is. That's probably the first big step, and some companies don't go past that step. But then beyond that, it's, I think, exploring intentionally alternative providers to meet a very specific need. Sometimes that might be faster delivery, closer to, within or near larger markets. It might be offering a different type of delivery option or pickup option to a customer, but you don't know if you can do that before you do the math first and understand what am I able to do? What volume can I move? Does it impact my discounts? If it does, by how much? Does savings with the other carrier or provider service offset that? If the answer to that is no, then are there other benefits? Am I able to drive more conversion with offering, a different option on the website, be it pickup or fast delivery same day? So I think it starts with a math problem first, and then deciding where to focus your efforts on finding the right solution for a specific need.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Good. So I love the comment coming out of the sessions about speed and cost and, people thinking about it differently. From your perspective, and not necessarily what you heard, but from your perspective, and we'll stay with small shippers for a while here on some of these questions. What's your thoughts around Amazon service that they're now starting to sell, if you will, to the general public? And what do you hear nowadays? I remember when I was like you in big retail, right? You had to have these different types of services, and that same day, next day, 1 hour type stuff when it was being introduced then, because you were trying to benchmark yourself against what Amazon was doing, was critically important to have if you wanted to compete. What are you hearing today? Has that relaxed itself at all? Is it something you still need, but it's not in use that much? And again, part one, kind of part two, what are you hearing about the new Amazon services that are being sold, if you will, to the general public?
Yeah, I guess I'll take the Amazon shipping the service that they're offering first. I'll say it kind of jury's still out. It's been what I would consider to be a slow rollout by Amazon, and this is purely my opinion. I think it's very, very intentional. If you're a package delivery carrier, you're basically, even though you have very good data, you're reactive to all of your customers providing you with volume and forecast, things like that. One advantage Amazon has, or at least they have until very, very recently, is they are creating the demand most of the most of the package they deliver for themselves. So they have great data. They're not reactive. They're very precise about which packages, which trucks move within your networks. So if you broadly or in a fast pace open up your own network to provide a service to other retailers, you're inviting volatility, and that it's inefficiency, and that's not something that's outweighs maybe the little bit of revenue lift or delivery density they might get. And so I think that's where it's still a slow rollout, and probably hasn't, I don't have numbers, but really gotten a lot of traction in the market. At some point, I would think if it does, Amazon would let us know that. So I don't think it has. Now, I guess just my take on it is it's a much better fit in the market for a small merchant, because one, they're probably already selling on Amazon. They don't have the, I guess, maybe trust issues that a larger enterprise retailer might have, and so that's where I think probably the traction over time will continue to grow, is that smaller merchant, and they're already accustomed to working closely with Amazon, and if the pricing is right and it's a simple process, then I think it makes sense.
Interesting.
And as far as the need, just real quick, to retailers having that need for delivery speed, whether it's same day or to kind of compete with Prime, 2-day or even 1-day delivery. I don't think there's a broad-based either continuation from, say, the 10 to 12 years ago when it first became a need, or something that most retailers have relaxed it. I think it's something that the retailers who really make delivery a priority, they focus on the delivery experience. They don't broadly need to deliver everything in 2 days. They very precisely will offer next day delivery, maybe to a customer when she lives 20 miles away from a fulfillment center, and at the low cost or free. Like, that's where I think the right focus is on, I don't want to say competing with Amazon or that expectation of fast delivery, is it shouldn't be an all or nothing proposition. You don't have to deliver everything really fast. But when you can deliver something fast, you can show it to a customer when she's browsing, do that. And do that at a low cost, maybe because it's close to a store or fulfillment center. So I think that's where the focus is just being more intentional with it and creating more kind of personalized experience versus I'm going to try to compete with Amazon or even Walmart. That's a losing proposition. And broadly speaking, I just don't think it's realistic for anybody.
So I take it then, because you live in the mecca of where all DTC is, out in that Ohio area, you're getting all your packages in one day?
Well, I'm not. So that's a topic I could talk about for a really long time, because and I've got some former employers who happen to be right, literally, kind of almost in my neighborhood. No, now it is very, I guess I'll give kind of a reprieve for some of them, very complex. So if you do have half a dozen or more, 10, whatever, fulfillment centers, and you're shipping from 400, 500 stores, it's not real straightforward, I guess, to do what I said that retailers should do, or maybe some are focusing on. But doesn't mean it can't be done. And I think plenty can do that, or maybe some already are, but apparently some of the ones close to me aren't quite there yet. So
I hear you. Got it. Let's move on.
Cost versus speed. I know we already talked about it a little bit, but still, shipping costs are rising. Do carriers need to balance between fast delivery and profitability, or maybe there are factors like sustainability, convenience, etc., that are more important nowadays?
yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, I don't want to repeat a lot of the last answer, but it's more so about whatever the most appropriate for a brand and whatever they've defined as their best customer delivery experience. That's what those delivery pickup options, returns, that's what that should be, and not kind of trying to generically or broadly compete on something that, whether it's Amazon fast delivery or something like that, that is really just kind of unrealistic. And then the other option, and the polar opposite, is just to do nothing. It's just to kind of, I'm going to deliver everything with standard shipping and have everyone pay for expedited shipping at a premium rate. That doesn't necessarily usually work either. So I think it has to do with being intentional. So whatever that experience is that you define you want to provide, sometimes it's not real obvious. You might have to test and experiment. So if there's a hypothesis that same-day delivery is going to drive conversion and provide value, figure out a way to test that and measure it. So I think there it's being more intentional about it, providing customer options. That's definitely part of it, and not just being kind of singularly focused on one thing. Maybe it's delivery speed that everybody happens to be talking about in the market.
All right, we're gonna move on to speed of integrations. Always fun, right? Everybody's bolting on, if you will, all these different applications. Now, you put a post out there a while ago mentioning, common sort of tech bottlenecks, often preventing retailers from fully capitalizing on these new opportunities. What are you seeing now in terms of successful strategies for bolting on some of these technologies, and what approaches or technologies are helping retailers streamline that carrier integration to unlock greater efficiencies?
Yeah, I think so. This is going to start sounding like I'm just criticizing retailers and they're not doing the right thing, but it actually, in this case, there hasn't been a lack of multi-carrier shipping solutions that can enable carriers in a pretty short amount of time. Those types of solutions have been in the market for a very, very long time. I think they have improved maybe in the past 5+ years, but it really lies more so on the shipper side or retailer of prioritizing, if either they don't have a technology solution at all to enable multiple carriers, prioritizing adding one, or replacing an outdated solution that doesn't meet their needs. And it always, if you go through the traditional business case, the old school, sometimes it could be CapEx, but usually operating expense, what justifies it, what the payback is. And sometimes those numbers won't all add up. It's an investment in flexibility, capabilities, contingency planning sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where a lot of the bottleneck actually exists, is not the lack of capabilities, but the hesitancy to invest time, resources, and money in that technology to enable multiple carriers, different types of carriers. Some of them can be enabled in a matter of days at this point if you have the right solution in place, but none of that matters if you're not willing to make that investment. And that's where, I'll say my area of expertise isn't deep exactly, but I do think a little bit of that can then be more kind of perceived level of effort, perceived complexity that's maybe a little bit overstated. And it just kind of, it gets always kind of shoved either off to the side or down the list. And that's where you just really ends up kind of being inflexible and can't react or really react as quickly as you need to.
Yeah, totally.
And next question, AI and last mile delivery. How is AI shaping the future of last mile delivery beyond just automating customer support?
Yeah, I think with that one, and this isn't an area where I've got a lot of experience, but just where it's surfaced some recently is particularly on the delivery provider side thus far is being able to whether it's AI, machine learning, to enable better carrier routing decisions. Sometimes it's the actual carrier itself. Sometimes it's a platform or kind of an orchestration solution that is dynamically selecting the right delivery partner in a certain market lane that may change by day, by probably not by hour, but based on a kind of a range of things. And the goal, of course, is to be more precise with delivery times. Estimated delivery date just happens to be an example. But then also just the speed of delivery can be faster and more reliable. So I think the reliability kind of goes hand in hand with the estimated delivery date. And so that's one where, again, some providers are able to use AI and leverage that to be more precise, more accurate with it, be able to adjust more dynamically. And that's where I think there's value right now from a customer standpoint. One other area, and I don't know yet whether there's a lot of value on the customer side, is with carrier pricing. That's one that UPS has spoken multiple times about, and that they're being more precise using AI in part of the models that they run for pricing. Again, depends on, I know that it improves the speed at which they can respond to pricing requests, but I believe it, to their, I guess, credit or need, it's self-serving. So I wouldn't expect that to really benefit customers quite yet. But that's another area where AI is kind of starting to make an impact.
So you think like more dynamic pricing, more refined and honed pricing that's very unique across the different shipper and the different commodities?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think seems like it's very, very early there. And, but again, I mean, it's more how you stated it, Jeff. It's not dynamic pricing necessarily, which goes both directions of saying in my being carrier network at this moment, I'm going to price this package 15% lower than whether it's stated rates for contract or something like that, because I have capacity in my network.
Right.
I'm going to be more precise with the pricing in the pricing model based on my costs, but usually it's going to go more so to my being the carrier's benefit, not necessarily the one that flexes both directions and provides cost savings to the shipper.
Not yet. We got to get them to come back our way.
Right.
We do. I'll ask you sort of an offshoot because you were there and you heard the announcement there as well, and we all knew about it in January. FEDEX, what's your thoughts about what they're doing with the whole play around the data that they have about their network and the resell of that data from a capabilities perspective for their clients?
Well, I think the details of exactly how customers currently, because there have been FedEx customers piloting it since at least January, probably before that, so better part of 8+ months. exactly in what ways they're using it, because it is kind of modular, which makes sense, like different areas, be it estimated delivery date was actually one, all the way through, you're saying fulfillment. I think that's kind of TBD and returns. Conceptually, like really high level, I think it makes sense for both FedEx and UPS to have solutions that can benefit package delivery customers in other areas of their business, kind of maybe further up we call it the supply chain, or just kind of further up into really their business, their e-commerce business. Now, that's kind of generic, and the FDX description of the service has been as well, been super high level. And so I don't know specifically how well that solution will provide value to customers. If it ever does, then it will provide top line, bottom line value to FedEx. So I think it's really early. Just conceptually, I think it makes sense that they need to have a solution like that in place, and they need for it to drive revenue to really retain customers, I think, is more so than acquire. Mm-hmm. And that's, in my opinion, partially because delivery is being so much more competitive. The price is very obvious right now, price competitive. That will at some point lessen if some volume returns to the market. But I think over time, delivery will be more commoditized, just generally in the market. Mm-hmm. And so FedEx needs to be able to compete on something more so than just deliver.
Yeah, got it. Yep.
So BOPA services, how do you see the buy online, pick up anywhere fitting into the broader trends in the last mile delivery? Do you think there is any significant value for retailers?
And not a commercial for us, by the way.
Right. Well, I mean, I think there's value for retailers. I mean, one obvious one, and this actually depends a little bit on what delivery services they're already using, but assuming they're using a service like maybe a FedEx home delivery or UPS ground, residential, those services carry surcharges for the residential delivery, and that alone makes that delivery more expensive than if it's delivered to a commercial location where it's just more efficient for the carrier. So there should be a cost savings there, for a package shipper. Now, that's on a package level, just a one for one if you look at the comparison. I would like to think that if there was greater adoption, and say even some package shippers, larger retailers, had a material amount of their volume. Material doesn't have to be 30%, but 10, 15% or so, that would actually even give that particular retailer more leverage to negotiate better rates overall with their carrier. So taking that several steps further, it could reduce expense for that particular retailer, because now their package volume is overall more efficient for the carrier to handle, a little bit more attractive. That's taking 3 or 4 steps past just the one package example. But I think as far as in the market, it really just comes back, I've said this several times, but being intentional about what a retailer's experiences they want to provide to their customers, and making sure that they are providing options. And sometimes that requires discovery, testing, pickup services. BOPA might be part of that. And for a particular brand, they might investigate it and find they didn't get the conversion or uptake result that they thought they would, and it doesn't make sense. Others may get that result. None of them will if they don't explore it and determine if it's the right fit for the brand. And so I think that's where BOPA and differently, I'll say same-day delivery kind of resides, is either just explore and determine if it's providing value. And really just same-day delivery, I think, is more so kind of everybody maybe competitively is doing it, so we're going to offer it. BOPA isn't there yet in the market, and so there I think it's just exploring, determining if it's the right fit, and being willing to not just kind of go with the status quo and have the same delivery options available.
And finally, on last mile innovation, key innovations in last mile logistics in 3, 5, 10 years.
3, 5, and 10 years. Well, I'll just, I think, go with one. I don't know if it's an innovation, but one, I think, really important item. And however this develops, I think will dictate a lot of what happens in the package delivery market. And so it's not necessarily new technology on the delivery side or new delivery providers who've figured something out that's different than what's in the market. It's really, I think, distributed inventory. It's the ability to locate inventory closer to the end customer, closer to demand, which provides all kinds of benefits, faster delivery, lower delivery cost, but it's incredibly difficult. It's really, really complex. Few retailers have done it. I mean, Amazon is the best example. Walmart as well, different kind of animal because a lot of stores as well. But the pace of change there of if more retailers can do that effectively, that will determine how the package delivery market looks. And if that accelerates, then some of the providers in the market now that are focused more on final mile, say in certain markets, or regional carriers, they can compete much, much better because then there isn't, I guess, the requirement for as much of this large national integrated network of a FedEx, UPS, or even the Postal Service. So if that accelerates, then I think you could see kind of different market share. UPS and FedEx aren't disappearing or going anywhere. This doesn't mean that Amazon would then take over the market in delivery. I don't think that's going to happen. But having many more retailers with the ability to locate inventory closer to customers, I think that will drive change or not if it doesn't happen in the market in the next, I'll say 3 to 5 years. 10 years out, I'm not quite able to look that far.
But I want to say one thing to the prior question, the question just before the last one, that I thought was very intuitive from your perspective, because it's actually happening. And that is with the BOPA stuff that's going on, and some of the buy online or the same day next day sort of stuff. The mix and the change in mix, because the adoption percentages are actually kind of where you're talking about. But that mix has now helped, if you will, actually some of the shippers, believe it or not, negotiate different cost structures with their carrier. So it's making a difference. So
that's good. I mean, that's one of the first things that I thought of a while ago when we first talked, things like that is the easier example for a package shipper, especially one that's not really large, that doesn't devote a lot of resources to managing parcel expenses, is just that one-to-one comparison saying it should be less costly. It's going to be lower cost to deliver a package to a BOPA location versus a residential location. But yeah, with any scale or kind of material amount within a shipper's volume, like package profile just becomes more attractive. So they should be leveraging that, because that was always I probably a long time ago when we first talked, UPS was much more, in my experience, I guess I would say, focused on their access points than FedEx's delivery manager and all that stuff. And UPS's selling point was, hey, you avoid residential delivery surcharges. And it's like, yeah, I get that. But if we do this for 10% of the volume, this is a gap, by the way, then we need to have a different conversation, because I don't want to just avoid the surcharges that you have in our contract now. I would expect better commercial rates, because we're providing more density and all those things. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Part of it is the replacement of claims and such. I mean, just that piece, right? There's dollars and cents there that you know, in your days and in my days, you would file those claims, or you'd have claims allowances and things like that. Those all change in this world completely. So that's good stuff. So anyway, I figured, Olga, you got to all the questions, right?
No, we're done. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.